Hey, it's Matt, and in this video I want to run you through the CCs and effects toggles for the Kemper Playa. So let me advance my screen here. So how I implemented this was I reserved MIDI notes 103 to 127 for the CC and effects toggles. Now I know I said in the last video, just put a note down anywhere to change your rigs, anywhere except the top two octaves. So in Ableton, that's G6 through G8. In Reaper, that's G7 through G9. Those are the top two octaves. In the MIDI specs, C, middle C is note 60, but they don't specify octaves, and so it's up to your host to specify how they want to use that. So that's just what it is. But just know it's the top two octaves that we use, and I'm going to be using the nomenclature of G6 through G8 because I'm going to do the demo here in Ableton, so you can just modify for whatever you are using. And so how I decided on these, what was I just looked at the manual and I started top down. So on page 171, it mentions the wah pedal. And so for me in Ableton, that's G8. And then the volume pedal is F# 8, panorama being F8 and all the way down. And so you can see the double line there between the page 171 and 172 and 173. Those are the toggles. Now, some of the limitations of using MIDI notes are that velocity implementation for both Ableton and Reaper are 1 to 127. I think they assume that a velocity of 0 means you don't have a note, and so that's their implementation of it. So you can't get a true 0 with your CC, but you get, the difference between 0 and 1 is less than 1% when you're going from 0 to 127, so it's not a huge deal. But if you need that true 0, you can just reload your amp, and that will take you back to where you need to go. So how do I toggle? Page 172 and 173, those to toggle, since there isn't a 0 in the velocity, anything below a 63 sends a 0. Anything 64 and above will send a 127, so that will be your on. So anything 63 and below is off, 64 and above is on. I just use 1 and 127 because that's the easiest way for me to think of it. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of a demo. Okay, so I want to do a couple quick examples to show you how this works with the CCs, the effects toggles. So we're going to start here. Again, you can see in Ableton how we set it up. We put the plugin in this channel, and then we have a MIDI channel over here. And this channel number 1 is our MIDI input from. This is the plugin right here. We set the monitor to in, MIDI out to the profiler. We're good to go. Okay, so I'll double click here. First thing is, I've got this rig. I've put a bunch of delay and a bunch of reverb on it just for part of the test here. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit and get in down here. I'll just put a note down and make sure that we're going back to this. This is rig bank 7 slot 1. So that's what we're going to get. We can play. We're in that rig. Okay, now say for instance at measure 3 you want to increase your gain. You want to kind of double it. You can see we're at 3.1 here on this. Maybe even want to go hotter than that. So if we come over here and look at our spreadsheet again, our gain is the C8. And so what we'll do is we'll put a C8 down. I'm going to scroll up here. Here's the C8, and then I'll fold that. I want that to happen here at measure 3. And let's just say I'm going to do 98. What does a 98 give me? If I come over here, I have this other spreadsheet linked out where I've got the values 0 to 127, how they map to 0 to 1, how they map to 0 to 10. Our gain is a 0 to 10. We're currently at 3.1, which is like a 40. If we go to something higher like a 98, that's going to give us a 7.7 most likely. So let's see what happens when we do that. I'll just hit play and we'll see what it sounds like. Okay, so you can hear that the gain went way up, and you can see that the gain went to 7.7 down here. Next example. Okay, say you do this, you needed the gain to come up, and then you need it to go back down, say 2 measures later, and you're going to set that back to where it was at 3.1. You find 3.1 over here, right about here, so you want to set it to 40 when you come back in. All right, so that'll take it back down. And everything's great. And then the singer says, oh, can you shut the reverb off and the delay off during that section? Turn it back on when the band comes in, but you need to shut it off. Okay, great, fine. So we go back here and we want to shut it off without spillover. So that's a G7 for the delay module. That without spillover is an F7. So a G7 and an F7. Come over here, we find our G7 right here and our F7 right here. Going to fold those up. So at this measure where the gain increases, we want to take the G7, I'm going to set it to 1 because we want to shut it off, and the F7 set it to 1. So as discussed, our note velocities only have values 1 to 127. So where you would generally address this by saying 0 is off and non-zero is on. Again, how we do this is 63 and below is off, 64 and above is on. And then we're going to turn it back on here. I like to use 127, so I'll turn them both back on at 127. The reason I like to use 1 and 127 is the way that it shades it dark and light. So I know for toggles, dark is off, the light color is on, and we're good to go. So what we should hear is the gain comes on at measure 3, goes way up, and our reverb and delay shut off, and then the gain goes back to 3.1, and the reverb and delay come back on at measure 5. Okay, so I hope that gives you enough examples and you can take it from there and do whatever you'd like. Again, let me know.